Milton William Cooper. To some, he was a prophet. To others, a dangerous conspiracy theorist. He was a naval veteran, a broadcaster, and the author of one of the most controversial underground books ever written, Behold a Pale Horse. Cooper spoke of hidden governments, secret treaties with aliens, and even predicted acts of terror before they happened. Really? Who is this guy? Was he a truth-teller silenced by power, a man in the know with deep knowledge of the deep state? Was he just a man consumed by paranoia, or simply a tinfoil hat-wearing quack? What's interesting about William Cooper was his most consistent warning. A warning about hidden elites working towards a single goal: the creation of a new world order. For Cooper, wars, economic crises, even cultural upheavals were not accidents of history. They were orchestrated steps toward global government. He claimed, they want a one-world government, and they'll do anything to get it. Sounds pretty ominous today with our current events, don't you think? Although, the idea of a new world order was not invented by Cooper. It has roots in centuries of secret society law. The Freemasons, the Illuminati of Bavaria in the 18th century, and the Rosicrucians had long been accused of holding hidden knowledge and manipulating world events. In the 20th century, this suspicion shifted to elite policy groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, the Trilateral Commission, and the good old Yale Skull and Bones Society. Many former presidents of the United States were from this fraternity, such as the members of the Bush family, William Howard Taft and John Kerry. Many other numerous politicians, political leaders, financiers, intelligence agencies figures, all were carefully picked to hold these seats of power. It is a continuation and passing of the torch to members that will guide the age-old agenda of domination of the masses. The secret societies were planning as far back as 1917 to infiltrate and take over the United States government. They had to gain control of both political parties to create the illusion of freedom of choice. Cooper claimed the CFR was the central hub of the New World Order. Founded in 1921, the CFR is a think tank composed of politicians, business leaders, and academics focused on US foreign policy. To the mainstream, it's an elite but legitimate forum. To Cooper, it was the Illuminati in plain sight, the body that shaped wars, treaties, and the erosion of national sovereignty. Here are the early prominent figures in the Council of Foreign Relations since its birth in 1921. First, we have John W. Davis, who was the first CFR president and ambassador to the UK. Next is Elihu Root. He was one of the founders and a Secretary of State/War. Paul D. Cravath was the first vice president and a corporate lawyer. And lastly, we have Edwin F. Gay. He was the Secretary-Treasurer and the Dean of Harvard Business. Pretty well-endowed individuals, don't you think? But we need the brightest and the best to lead and solve world issues. Right? Let's move on to the Trilateral Commission. The TC was formed in 1973 by David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski as its first full-time director. The Trilateral Commission's objectives were aimed to foster cooperation between North America, Western Europe, and Japan. Also, it was to promote mutual understanding and cooperation between nations on global challenges. This involved analyzing issues and developing practical solutions and proposals for dealing with them. In retrospect, their role seems to be legit on its main purpose and goals. But, to Cooper, this was not cooperation, but consolidation, a stepping stone to merging governments into a single global authority over time. Cooper was adamant on targeting the secret societies, fraternities, and elite clubs, in which over generations these societies produced senators, presidents, and business titans. He argued its rituals and influence were evidence of a hidden network of power that spanned generations. He pointed to Masonic symbolism in US architecture, the eye above the pyramid on the American dollar bill, the alignment of Washington and construction, DC's monuments and their symbolism, all proof that secret societies had always guided America's destiny. Cooper often cited the words of presidents themselves as evidence. In 1991, President George H.W. Bush declared, "Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge." To many Americans, this was diplomatic language after the Cold War. To Cooper, it was a mask-off moment, a rare admission of the elite's ultimate goal. Bring in new legislation to impede on our freedoms and rights slowly, which many declare the Patriot Act was the catalyst. According to Cooper, secret societies orchestrated control through wars which were set up to destabilize nations and enrich bankers. The manufacturing of economic crises, such as the Great Depression and the housing bubble of 2008. These crises were to consolidate financial power. Also, media manipulation. Today, news has become a battleground for propaganda on truth to shape public opinion. Fear campaigns, from communism to terrorism, to justify surveillance and control. In his eyes, history was not a series of random events, but a chessboard where every move had been pre-arranged. These claims struck a chord because they connected real patterns, elite groups meeting behind closed doors such as the Bilderberg Group, financial interests steering policy such as tech companies, and presidents openly invoking a new world order with a larger narrative of control. To Cooper's followers, he had ripped the veil from history itself. To his critics, he had stitched together half-truths and coincidences into a grand but unfalsifiable conspiracy. But Cooper's vision of the New World Order didn't stop with bankers and politicians. He believed humanity's betrayal went even deeper, deep into secret treaties with beings not of this world. Now we're talking. Perhaps Cooper's most audacious claim was that the United States government signed treaties with extraterrestrials. He said he saw classified Navy documents that described a deal made in the 1950s, one that would change humanity's future forever. According to Cooper and other UFO researchers, in 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower was secretly flown to Edwards Air Force Base, some say Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. At this time, he was allegedly meeting with beings from another world. And we're not talking about Klingons. The story goes that after failed negotiations with one alien group, sometimes described as tall, benevolent Nordics, the US struck a deal with another race, the so-called Greys, and this became known as the Greider Treaty. There has been much lore about these two groups of alien species in recent decades, about their past interactions with humans. In 1954, under the Eisenhower administration, a treaty was made with alien beings. In exchange for technology, the aliens were allowed to abduct humans on a limited basis for experimentation. In theory, the aliens promised to provide advanced technology, materials, science, propulsion, maybe even energy breakthroughs. In return, they were permitted to abduct humans, provided no harm was done, and records of abductees were submitted to the National Security Council. But Cooper claimed the aliens broke the deal, taking far more people than allowed, and never reporting who they took. I guess those weekly TPS reports were slowly fading out. This story gained traction because in February 1954, Eisenhower mysteriously vanished from public view while on a trip to Palm Springs. Officially, the White House said he was having emergency dental surgery, but UFO researchers suggest he was whisked away for a secret meeting. Some accounts even claim multiple meetings occurred at Edwards, Holloman, and later at a base in Nevada, not sure which one. But to believers, the dental excuse was just a cover story for history's first interstellar summit. Cooper tied this treaty to rumors of underground bases. Dulce, New Mexico, became the centerpiece of these stories, a massive facility where aliens and humans allegedly worked side by side. Whistleblowers like Phil Schneider later claimed they had seen hybrid programs, genetic experiments, and even firefights between US soldiers and extraterrestrials deep underground. Whether true or not, the Dulce base story perfectly fit Cooper's worldview. that government elites had not only betrayed the American people, but literally handed them over to non-human powers in exchange for technology. Although hard evidence of such treaties remains elusive, documents like Majestic 12 papers, often cited by Cooper, were later revealed to be hoaxes or intelligence disinformation. But the Eisenhower disappearance, multiple witness testimonies from Air Force insiders, and the rise of abduction reports in the 1960s gave these theories a powerful aura of possibility. To Cooper, these weren't science fiction tales. They were proof that the New World Order wasn't just human, it was interstellar. By fusing UFO lore with the shadowy plans of elites, Cooper created a narrative where the Illuminati and extraterrestrials were partners in global domination. And if this was true, the cost was chilling. Human lives traded like currency in a secret bargain. Long before school shootings became headline tragedies, William Cooper warned that America's youth were being turned into weapons. His claim and theories were stark. The government would drug children with psychotropic medication, unleash them in violent massacres, and then use the chaos to restrict gun rights. Pretty unsettling. Cooper made these warnings in the late 1980s and early 1990s, when America was witnessing a surge in psychiatric prescriptions for children. Drugs like Ritalin, methylphenidate, and later SSRIs such as Prozac, fluoxetine, were being widely prescribed for ADHD and depression. Between 1987 and 1996, the number of children diagnosed with ADHD in the US more than doubled, and prescriptions for stimulants skyrocketed. For Cooper, this was not medicine. He believed it was social engineering. At the time, his warning seemed outlandish, but in hindsight, it appeared eerily prescient. In the 1990s and 2000s, a series of tragic school tragedies unfolded, many involving perpetrators who had histories with psychiatric medication. Kip Kinkle, 1998, Springfield, Oregon, indicated in reports, which later revealed he was prescribed Prozac. Eric Harris, 1999, Columbine High School. One of the Columbine attackers was taking Luvox, another SSRI antidepressant, at that time. Jeffrey Weiser, 2005, Red Lake High School. The 16-year-old was prescribed Prozac. These connections between shooters and antidepressants became talking points for conspiracy theorists, who saw Cooper's prophecy fulfilled. Critics argued that correlation did not equal causation. Millions safely took these drugs without violence. But for Cooper's audience, the pattern was undeniable. So, Cooper's larger claim wasn't just about drugs. He said these tragedies were part of a controlled strategy, what some call problem-reaction solution. He expressed that the formula works like this: manufacture a problem, then create chaos, such as a tragic event. Then the public will demand safety and order, provide a solution in which the government imposes gun restrictions and expands surveillance. Cooper saw every mass shooting not as an isolated act, but as a stepping stone toward disarming the public. Mainstream psychiatry and law enforcement pushed back. Studies by the FDA and the National Institute of Mental Health found no conclusive evidence that SSRIs caused violent crime. But in 2004, the FDA did issue a black box warning for antidepressants, acknowledging an increased risk of suicidal thoughts in children and adolescents. To Cooper's listeners, this was vindication, proof that the drugs carried dangers authorities had downplayed. The epidemic of school shootings, the over-medication of children, and the suspicion that government solutions often meant fewer freedoms. By the time the 2000s brought more tragedies, his prediction had become part of the conspiracy canon. William Cooper saw it coming. To his critics, Cooper was exploiting tragedy. But to his believers, he had once again revealed the script before it was performed, and his most chilling forecast was yet to come: a terrorist attack that would shake the world, blamed on a familiar name. In June of 2001, William Cooper made what would become his most famous prediction. Just 74 days before the attacks of September 11th, he went on air with a chilling warning.
Be prepared for a major attack. They're going to blame it on Osama Bin Laden. Don't you even believe it. This is going to be the work of our own government against our own people.
Cooper called Osama bin Laden a CIA asset, a man who had been funded and armed by the US during the Soviet-Afghan War in the 1980s. This wasn't speculation. Declassified documents and public records confirm that the CIA funneled support to the Afghan Mujahideen, though officials insist they never directly funded bin Laden himself. To Cooper, bin Laden was not the mastermind of future terror. He was the scapegoat, chosen years in advance to justify a new phase of government control. Talk about having a gut feeling about something. By the summer of 2001, intelligence chatter was high. Agencies around the world reported a spectacular attack was imminent. On July 5th, just a week after Cooper's broadcast, the White House's counter-terrorism chief Richard Clarke warned that something really spectacular is going to happen soon. But Cooper's framing was different. He didn't predict an attack. He predicted the narrative, that it would be blamed on bin Laden and used to strip Americans of their freedoms. On the tragic morning of September 11th, 2001, 4 hijacked planes struck the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a Pennsylvania field. It was a day of horror and tragedy for all the lives we lost on that day. Within hours after the attack, the FBI named Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda as prime suspects. For believers, it was confirmation that Cooper's warning had been right. But for skeptics, it was a coincidence amplified by hindsight. After all, bin Laden had already been blamed for the 1998 US embassy bombings and the 2000 USS Cole attack, making him the obvious suspect. Although it did seem that Cooper was fishing for credit for something that was previously known and stated. Yet, Cooper's deeper warning, that tragedy would be used to justify government overreach, did prove correct. Just 6 weeks after 9/11, Congress passed the Patriot Act. It expanded surveillance powers, allowed warrantless wiretaps, broadened government access to financial and personal records, and introduced new detention powers. Critics called it a direct assault on civil liberties. Others, it was protection of its citizens. But to Cooper's followers, it was the very playbook he had described: create fear, then use it to consolidate control. But was Cooper right? Or was he just a guy who wore too many tinfoil hats? Well, mainstream analysts argue that Cooper's prediction wasn't supernatural foresight. They point out that bin Laden had already been publicly identified as America's #1 enemy in the past. In fact, just days before Cooper's broadcast, CNN had aired multiple reports naming bin Laden as a likely orchestrator of future attacks. But what set Cooper apart was his framing, that the government itself would allow or even stage the event to justify war abroad and surveillance at home.
The state is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of man.
After September 11th, Cooper's status shifted from fringe broadcaster to prophetic martyr. He had named the villain, he had named the motive, and just months later, he was dead. His prediction became one of the most cited pieces of evidence that the government not only knew of the attacks in advance, but exploited them to reshape the world. These were bold statements, I would say, and that they have the tendency to resonate negatively. If Cooper's 9/11 warning cemented his legacy, his theories about President Kennedy's assassination tied him directly to America's deepest conspiracy, that those who challenge the hidden order do not survive long. Few events in American history attract as much speculation as the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. William Cooper tied this moment directly to his larger narrative, arguing that Kennedy was murdered not by a lone gunman, but by the shadowy powers he had vowed to expose. In his book called Behold the Pale Horse, Cooper made 2 bold assertions: that Kennedy was killed because he was preparing to reveal the US government's contact with extraterrestrials, and that the president's driver, William Greer, turned and fired the fatal shot. The belief in the alleged claim was that the driver of Kennedy's car, William Greer, turned and shot the president. This claim was supported by a grainy, altered version of the Zapruder film circulated in the 1980s, which seemed to show the driver turning and firing a weapon. Later analysis revealed the footage was doctored, a hoax. But Cooper insisted it confirmed what he had read in classified documents. Even though his driver-shooter theory was debunked, Cooper's framing resonated because it tied the most shocking assassination in modern US history to his broader worldview. If a president could be killed for defying secret powers, then anyone could. To his listeners, Kennedy's death wasn't just history, it was a warning. For Cooper, Kennedy's assassination showed the cost of defying the hidden order. Cooper also pointed to Kennedy's now famous speech to the American Newspaper Publishers Association in April 1961, where the president warned of a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relied on infiltration, subversion, and secrecy.
I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
Most historians interpret this as a reference to the Cold War and communism. But Cooper and others argued it was a veiled warning about secret societies and the Illuminati. Here is another segment of one of Kennedy's speeches in 1961, stating that we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. To Cooper, Kennedy was signaling his resistance to the New World Order and paying the ultimate price for it in Dallas, 1963. Cooper further claimed Kennedy had demanded access to classified files on UFOs and the so-called Majestic 12 Group, a secret committee allegedly overseeing extraterrestrial technology. Some researchers cite a controversial document known as the Burned Memo, which suggests Kennedy ordered the CIA to share UFO intelligence with NASA just 10 days before his assassination. The authenticity of this document is highly disputed, but it became a cornerstone for those who believe Kennedy was silenced over aliens. Of course, Cooper's version is just one among dozens of theories. Like, the Warren Commission concluded Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. The House Select Committee on Assassinations, 1979, found there was likely a second gunman, though evidence was inconclusive. And other theories implicate the CIA, the Mafia, Cuban exiles, or military-industrial interests. What set Cooper apart was his insistence that JFK's death was not just political, but cosmic, a battle over humanity's right to know the truth about alien contact. For me, that is far out there to say the least. By the late 1990s, William Cooper had retreated to a remote property outside the small town of Eagar, Arizona. From there, he broadcast his shortwave radio program, The Hour of the Time. He claimed federal agents circled his land in black SUVs. He said he was being watched, harassed, and targeted. To his followers, Cooper was a prophet in exile. To the authorities, he was a fugitive growing increasingly dangerous. He believed he was next and ultimately being marked for elimination. Cooper's final years played out against a turbulent backdrop. Across America, armed citizen militias were on the rise. Events like Ruby Ridge in 1992, where federal agents killed the wife and son of survivalist Randy Weaver during a standoff. The incident at Waco in 1993, where over 70 Branch Davidians died in a fiery siege with the ATF and FBI. It was an event that had fueled anger and distrust toward the government. Cooper's warnings of a new world order, gun confiscation, and secret plots resonated deeply with these groups. His broadcasts became required listening in militia circles. The FBI even listed Behold a Pale Horse as one of the most common books found in militia safehouses during the 1990s. Let's fast forward to 1995. A man named Timothy McVeigh carried out the Oklahoma City bombing, killing 168 people. Investigators later discovered McVeigh was an avid consumer of anti-government literature, including Behold a Pale Horse. Cooper condemned the attack, insisting violence against innocents was not the answer. But to the FBI, his fiery rhetoric made him indistinguishable from the growing extremist movement. By the late 1990s, Cooper was wanted on charges of tax evasion and aggravated assault. He had publicly declared he would never be taken alive. In July 2001, just months before his death, he sent an email warning,
I know the federal government is going to come for me. I will not go quietly and I will defend myself.
Cooper lived in what was effectively a state of siege, heavily armed, broadcasting his warnings and preparing for the day he believed was inevitable. And that tragic night would eventually come. On the night of November 5th, 2001, Apache County deputies attempted to arrest Cooper outside his home. Reports say Cooper fired first, striking a deputy in the head. Officers returned fire, killing Cooper instantly. To law enforcement, it was the tragic end of a volatile, armed fugitive. To his followers, it was an assassination, the silencing of a man who had warned the world about 9/11 and the New World Order. Even in death, Cooper's story divides opinion. Was he a paranoid recluse, a subvert, or a man with undisclosed illnesses who brought tragedy upon himself? Or was he, as he claimed, hunted down because he told the truth? The irony was haunting. He had warned for years that those who defy the secret order end up dead. And on that cold November night, William Cooper became his own final prophecy. In the 1990s, Cooper's broadcasts and Behold a Pale Horse were staples in the American militia and Patriot movements. The FBI reported that his book was one of the most common texts found in militia safehouses, alongside the Bible and survivalist manuals. His warnings about government surveillance, gun control, and manufactured crises gave these groups a framework for understanding Ruby Ridge, Waco, and later, the Oklahoma City bombing. In the late 1990s, a young Austin broadcaster named Alex Jones frequently cited Cooper's work. Jones borrowed heavily from Cooper's themes of globalist control, staged terror attacks, and secret societies. But the two clashed. Cooper accused Jones of sensationalism and called him a liar on air. Yet, when Cooper died in 2001, Jones stepped into the vacuum, amplifying and monetizing the very template Cooper had built. Cooper's warnings about a hidden cabal manipulating world events found new life decades later in QAnon. The idea of a new world order became the deep state. His warnings of staged tragedies became false flag theories. His distrust of mainstream media became the rallying cry, do your own research. QAnon's cryptic posts even echoed Cooper's teaching style, presenting fragments of information for followers to decode into a larger narrative. In this way, William Cooper was the bridge between Cold War paranoia and the internet-driven conspiracy movements of the 21st century. Critics dismiss Cooper as a paranoid man who blurred hoaxes with truth. Scholars note that his inclusion of forgeries like the Protocols of Zion fed dangerous anti-Semitic tropes, but his defenders argue that he was a patriot who saw the writing on the wall: mass surveillance, government deception, and the steady march towards centralization of power. In some ways, both may be true, both may be false. Cooper's legacy is not about whether every claim was correct. It's about how his work shaped the lens through which millions now view authority. Milton William Cooper lived and died on the edge of belief. He was a sailor, a broadcaster, an author, and to many, a prophet. Some of his claims have been thoroughly debunked. Others remain impossible to prove. And a few, warnings of mass surveillance, creeping authoritarianism, and government exploitation of tragedy came disturbingly close to reality. Perhaps Cooper's most lasting message was not in any single prophecy, but in his approach to truth. In Behold a Pale Horse, he wrote,
Listen to everyone, read everything, believe nothing, unless you can prove it in your own research.
It was both a caution and a challenge, urging readers to question authority, but also to question him. Cooper knew that unchecked trust, whether in governments or in profits, leads to control. But either way, William Cooper left behind a voice that still echoes, a reminder that when governments conceal, people speculate, and when speculation takes hold, it can change the course of culture itself. To his critics, he was a fringe conspiracy theorist. To his followers, he was a prophet who saw what others could not. But to history, William Cooper remained something stranger, a man whose questions outlived his answers. And maybe that was always the point.
Thanks for watching. Don't be shy. Hit the like and subscribe button. Until the next one, take care and stay curious, because I always am.